Welcome to Coming Clean with Indy Lee, a podcast series about living with passion, acting with purpose, and being fully present. I'm your host, Indy Lee. On today's episode, I get to sit down with Kristine Keheley. Kristine is one of the co-founders and chief formulator of Vapor Beauty and Taos Air. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, Kristine. I thought we could start by sharing your journey. I mean, you're this incredibly talented artist, and then you kind of transitioned into makeup, formulation, chemistry. I'm not even fully explaining the breadth of your talent.
Hi, Indy. It's really this lifelong journey that has just kind of unfolded, I think really by living my life as the most authentic person I can be. And that has led me from being drawn to beauty and art from a really young age to just loving scent and loving color, and those becoming languages to me that I want to be fluent in. And that took me really not into chemistry, but I would really call my approach to formulating more akin to alchemy.
I love that. I love that term. You are an alchemist. You are absolutely an alchemist. You're magic.
Well, I believe deeply in the magic of the universe. And as you do, the magic of the present moment and the connections that we forge by living honestly in the present moment. And so I have quite a, nonlinear path that got me from childhood to lipstick and deodorant. And it really it really starts, my earliest memory was, my family was living in Paris in the 60s, and my dad was holding me in his arms in front of Van Gogh's Starry Night in a museum. And I came into my body, in that moment. And it really was that thing of being struck by lightning, having the feeling of now I'm breathing.
Amazing.
And I exist. And
this was a calling to you.
It's kind of like family legend that I threw this huge tantrum in the museum when he moved on to the next painting and was just sobbing inconsolably. And he would move back in front of Starry Night, so I would quiet down. And that just kind of that earliest memory of paint, of color, of beauty, of someone's vision and expression as beauty, is really the life force to me. So that definitely, as I was a child and as a teenager, took me down this voyage of becoming a painter. And we lived in Europe until I was 12, so I was incredibly fortunate to be immersed in a culture that respected and appreciated and created beauty. And that just became another layer of meaning in my life and a layer of experience. And I really date my love of adventure and travel to that time period. And those were things that my parents really nurtured and fostered. And I would say that, because of that fortunate childhood, my entire way of being in the world is about that experience of beauty, that kind of visceral connection to what beauty is. So much so that I've come to see and recognize the force of beauty as a healing element, that beauty is the healer. And let's see, I kind of took that through. I went to college, studied archaeology because I fell in love with Greek and Roman and Egyptian history and artifacts, and understanding that urge that people have always had to create beauty with their hands, whether it's architecture or sculpture or painting. Certainly very interested in sacred architecture.
Why am I not shocked? I could just sit here and listen to this. I'm like, okay, everybody's on this ride. I'm loving it. Kristine, you have such a beautiful way of of just sharing your journey with people. You really do. You are just such a unique, beautiful person. And I love an alchemist. So this to me is just, I'm so excited that you and I get to sit down and do this. So keep going. Sorry, I was just so excited about this.
No, I love it. And I can riff forever on all of this. But eventually, many travels, lots of travel in the Mediterranean. I just became, since I was a little kid, just so entranced by all of the countries that surround the Mediterranean, and made sure that I was able to study as much as possible through my college years there. But eventually, I kind of landed in Taos, New Mexico at the age of 24. And I came here expressly to be a painter, to seriously devote myself to just becoming a better painter, no matter what it took. And it was a vow. It was a vow and a commitment to myself that was to be my focus. And it was to be my focus until the road ran out, is really the way that I know that I approached it at that age. And so really, kind of coming here with nothing. And I bartended for 10 years at the Taos Inn, and kind of held myself together any way I could. And during that time at the Taos Inn, they had fantastic wine program. And I started to recognize that I had an unusual sense of smell, that I was a nose.
That you were a nose.
And
that's amazing.
I'd never had the opportunity to understand that that was a gift that I had. So that was an element, and I already had the color piece. And so I kind of wanted to stop working nights, and I started working with Greg Martin and Krisha Boynes at their natural lip balm company. And it was a way for me to, stop working nights, and kind of just literally became my day job as an artist. And pretty quickly, I discovered an affinity for the kinds of things that they were doing. I loved the natural beeswax. I loved the natural plant ingredients. Always had a real love of plants and plant medicine, and understanding the ways that plants are healers, that plants have magical benefits and properties. And so that kind of fell into place, and I kind of accidentally fell into becoming the formulator for their business.
That's so cool.
And it's amazing. It's a truly amazing, as I said, just non-linear path, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't set out with an ambition to be a cosmetics formulator. I had been a very natural, I think, teenager in terms of a love of cosmetics and perfume. But I think so many women have that, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't expressly set out with certainly a career in cosmetics or formulating as my goal.
Well, you were in good company here. Neither did I.
Right? I mean, you get it. It's a nonlinear path.
Oh, this was about as nonlinear as you can get for me. So yeah, I totally get it.
I'm sure you paid attention along the way to whatever the signposts were that led you. And it's, a lot of things about being in the present moment mean that we don't ignore the stimulus around us, right?
Yeah.
We make the connections to the opportunities and the leaps and the risks that we have to take to get where we want to go. So that all kind of came together, and I ended up creating a bunch of products for national brands that sold mostly through Whole Foods, teaching myself inventing products, niche part of the cosmetics industry, which is anhydrous formulation. And the most basic anhydrous formula is a lip balm. And if you think about that, there's great lip balms in the world. I'll do a little plug for Vapor's Luxe. Lip balms are not they're not a classic moisturizer. They're not a classic foundation. They aren't really the texture that you would normally associate with a high-end cosmetic product. So along the way, I started experimenting with a lot of natural ingredients, just idea building upon idea, inspiration coming the way that it does. And I would take the time and have the patience to experiment and persevere. And I started to come up with some really interesting textures that didn't need water. And that was incredibly exciting because I was getting to sort of almost emulsion or cream textures, but without using any water. And the beautiful thing about that is that if you don't use water in a product, you don't need to include a harsh preservative or bacterial complex to kill off bacteria, antibacterial complex.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the products stay super pure. They stay very, very close to the magic and the benefits of the plants. And so it was very exciting. And I really felt that mission of creating safe products for women to use, being very concerned about pollution from a very young age, and really concerned about packaging and how we could make the best decisions possible to make the cleanest, safest, most responsible and accountable products.
That then morphed into what is now vapor.
Right. And so in 2008, Krisha and I had seen so many brands that we worked with, had that classic moment of, I think we can do this better.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to start our own brand, which was Vapor. And that was 2008. And we launched in 2009 with, I think, 33 SKUs. And by the time 2017 came around, so, a little less than 10 years later, we had grown that to 180 products.
Unbelievable.
It was really a very, something I'm sure you can identify with, that you start a business and before you know it, it's everything.
Yep.
Right?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
hard to discern where it's on and where it's off.
Oh, absolutely. It can take over and to pardon pun, it grows organically. But then, you blink and you're almost 10 years later, and what started out as this small thing has really taken over most of your life. And hey, by the way, I love what I do, and I'm thrilled it takes over most of my life. Like, it fulfills me, but it's incredible. It has a life of its own. Okay, so now you and Krisha have Vapor, which is this well-known beauty line that started out in the anhydrous makeup sector. And then all of a sudden you went off into deodorants. Explain what was the process there?
Right. So in 2008, when Krisha and I decided to form Vapor, we were both in the midst of some of the most painful stuff in our lives. My mother died literally the week that I named the brand Vapor.
Oh my gosh.
I was with her and with my family, and Krisha and I were involved in talks with some marketing partners that we were going to work with. And that was all happening that week of preparing for her funeral. And Krisha had just gotten a diagnosis of a recurrence of breast cancer. And so I just remember very clearly having this phone call with her about, we were talking about, were we crazy to be doing this when we were both so depleted and in such an awful place personally. And we just decided that we were going to do our best to come out of that and make something beautiful from it. And that's where we kind of committed to, let's do Vapor. And in 2012, or I can't remember the exact year, but Krisha I think her initial diagnosis was 2008, and then she had a recurrence a few years later. And her doctor told her, hey, one of the best things you could do is not use an antiperspirant and switch to a natural deodorant. And I think that you had a similar experience of don't add to your toxic load by using any kind of conventional chemical-based products on your body, right?
Yep. Like, here's something that you can make a switch with and bring awareness to. And it was that light bulb. That was my awakening, where I was like, wait a minute, I know we can do this better, and it can be beautiful and effective. And I love that both what you and Krisha did, and much like me, is you took something terrible and created something beautiful from it. And I have to tell you, your deodorant is beautiful. It is the one that I use, and saying it here now, guys, and I certainly want you to tell people about what makes yours so different. But if I was ever going to have a deodorant, Kristine, you're formulating it. Just saying.
I love that, Indy. We can talk about that.
Okay.
About that after this.
Okay. But what makes your deodorant formula so different, and why is it so effective?
Well, so Krisha wanted to do a deodorant, and I kind of balked at it at first. I hated every single natural deodorant that I'd ever tried. And I just started to understand that any kind of solid natural deodorant was going to be just inherently flawed. It wasn't going to hold together structurally. And sure, truly all natural deodorants that were in a stick at that point were very brittle, and they just kind of fell apart after a few uses.
Yep.
And they were a very unsatisfying experience. I mean, not, even odor aside, like,
it just wasn't a good user experience for me.
Yeah, it was a horrible experience. Right?
It was either like wet and gooey, really hard, where it was like hurting when I'm trying to, but I'm like, am I actually putting anything on my body? And as a result, I always ended going back to conventional until I started using yours. And I've tried them all.
So it was a long process. I knew I needed it to be, it to perform, and I wanted it to be delivered in as conventional a format as I could pull off. Right. Mm-hmm. So it took me years. It took me years of experimenting. I also really wanted it to have that beautiful scent structure.
So, Kristine, tell me a little bit about the scent, because I know it's really important to you, as you discussed. You recognized that you have a nose and how it works into how you formulate. And so, tell me a little bit about that and how that really works and plays into the Air brand.
Sure. Scent is really critical to Air in terms of its sensory experience and what it really can add to your day. I see scent as poetry and music and color all at once, and yet it's invisible, so it's incredibly mysterious and beautiful. It's an immediate bridge from the physical to the metaphysical. I think we all understand how scent and memory are entwined. And to me, there's this way of using scent to transport people across time to your fondest past memory, or inviting you into an unknown, gorgeous future. I think that wearing scent is a gift that you give yourself about that connection to beauty and meaning. And Taos Air is really about that connection to the plants through essential oils. And the essential oil is the most beautiful and expressive part of the plant's soul. And so I think this is really one of the things I'm proudest of, is the deodorant formula. Definitely some of our foundation formulas too, but the deodorant was a huge leap and risk and willingness to go into the unknown, experiment upon failed experiment, to get to this really precise and tight threshold of what all the correct ratios were, what the process was going to be, and all the while keeping it anhydrous, keeping it as organic as possible. And that means using as many certified organic ingredients as possible, no water, and it had to work.
Yeah.
So it really was a lengthy development process, very much a leap into the unknown. And I think that that's something that I would like to speak up for all formulators on, that we are risk takers into the unknown, because when you're really working on something that's outside the bounds of cosmetic chemistry, which is what all natural products are, really, like the cleaner something is, the stranger the path to getting there was.
What I love is that Air, well, at this point it was still vapor, but the deodorant it's gel to powder, which is really different. So there is no stickiness. It's like, it's just the nicest user experience. Like I could put on clothes right afterwards. I don't feel like I'm, flapping my wings, waiting for it to dry or anything like that. It's just, Kristine, it's beautiful.
That's always been super important, right? And I know that's important to you with your products.
Yeah.
That the user experience has to be elegant. It has to be elevated. It has to be almost transportive, right?
Agreed.
You want that. You've got, first of all, you have a relationship with the user. The product has I respect that moment that someone decides to buy our products. And I also respect the moment that someone is using it to make themselves feel better or perform better, give themselves an experience of beauty during the day. That moment, I never take that moment for granted. And so if you think about, like, you've got a few seconds in a store for somebody to try that texture and feel it on their skin and smell it, it's got to work immediately. It's got to wow them immediately.
Right. Otherwise they're going to move on to the next product. So it has to grab them. And they're all, I think, in beauty and personal care, really every area is becoming a crowded space. So you have to stand out. And by standing out, it has to be a beautiful user experience, but it has to be effective. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful.
Totally. And so one of the biggest performance hurdles to overcome with the natural deodorant is that sticky dry down. Some natural deodorants feel like they're never going to dry and that they're going to leave you sticky for quite a while. So that gel to powder was the way to get it to dry down immediately, to be silky on the skin. And I say that as though it was easier to get there, and it wasn't.
I know.
Right. And the main thing is that it works.
Yep.
And it works immediately.
Exactly. Exactly. So then it went from being vapor, right? From vapors, air, next level. And then all of a sudden you created Taos Air. So tell me a little bit how that happened.
Well, again, it's one of those obvious choices when you look back at it, but it's nonlinear in the beginning. It never really fit in very well with the cosmetics line. And we started to see and recognize that there was this huge opportunity to use the deodorant as the starting point to build this whole line of products that elevate the daily essential product. Taking that opportunity for thoughtfulness and ritual and a way to connect to yourself for a true moment of self-care, and just take that pause and be present with a beautiful sensory experience. So that's not really what Vapor is about. Vapor is about beautiful cosmetic experience, but that experience of color and complexion is a really different moment in your day than rituals of self-care and personal care.
Got it. So then tell me a little bit. So then it's called Taos. And as far as I know, Taos is the muse for this. So what's the story behind the brand name? Because I think it's got such a beautiful story. I'd love for people to know.
Sure. So Taos Air is the name that we spun out of Vapor. It's its own entity now, its own brand. And Air, in its name and its soul, is inspired by my 30-year love of living in Taos, New Mexico. And Taos is this very old, small town. It is located at the southern end of the Southern Rockies, so it's the very tail end of the Rockies. We're close to the border with Colorado. It's this incredibly dramatically beautiful place, and it's so close to the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. It sits at about 7,000 feet above sea level, and it's surrounded by mountains that rise another 6,000 feet above that. So I've always thought about this valley as this island in the sky that's just kind of floating here.
I love it.
And the valley itself is also, it's bisected by a rift zone, a volcanic rift zone that is actually the Rio Grande River Gorge. So there's volcanoes, there's extinct volcanoes in the valley. And so the landscape is this just ancient place that feels so connected constantly to the elements, and that connection is real and it's vital and it's everyday. It's not abstract. I think that most people that live in Taos could probably tell you what phase the moon is in.
That's amazing.
They would tell you what time of day it was by the way the color of the light is. You could be dropped here from anywhere and be able to tell what time of year it is by the light. So that 7,000 foot elevation is really a key to understanding this place.
And it's really, it's a brand. I mean, it's not just, yes, it's the muse and it's the, but that in of itself is for me, speaks to a brand that encompasses taking care of oneself and being tied to the earth.
Yes. And connected to the elements, connected to an intentional way of life, connected to a responsible way of life. We're very much aware of our community water resources, our interconnectedness with one another is something that's real. You rely on people here and you give to people here. And I've lived with that, and I've lived that way for very intentionally the last 30 years. And so with what I do as a formulator, as a brand founder, I'm just super passionate about all of those things coming together to protect plants, water, and people with every choice that I make as the founder of a brand. And I take that global and local perspective really seriously. It's my source and my inspiration.
You're intentional. Very intentional.
Extremely intentional at every step of the way. And so it's kind of that root of that, which is the source energy that kind of takes us back to my Greek past with archaeology. The Greeks had a concept of aether, and that's AETHER. And that is the plasma and the soul that infuses and holds together the rest of the elements. And so that concept is something that I live my daily life with very intimately. And that's where was the root inspiration for Taos Air.
Amazing.
And it's also that connection to, we are up here in the air. We are the island in the sky.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So you and I have certainly seen clean beauty evolve over the last 5 years and where it's come, and it's now here to stay. But where do you see it going? Like it's now mainstream. So where do you see clean going from here? What do you think is next? I
think that as clean gets mainstreamed, there's always going to be people that are sort of along for the ride that don't know what that authentic journey is. So there's going to be a growing awareness of who's really real and who isn't. And hopefully an education of the consumer. I know that the consumer is hungry and thirsty for that education. And we have an extremely savvy consumer, both of our brands do.
Yep.
So I think the movement forward, the progression is towards regenerative. And I would say regenerative agriculture, regenerative brands, regenerative industry is the new organic. And that means moving away from the term sustainability. Sustainability, by definition, is about maintaining the status quo.
It's so funny. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I have to interject. It's so funny. I was having this conversation with someone not just 2 days ago that isn't it interesting that we're all touting the word sustainability, which is basically staying where you are. And yet,
Exactly.
and I'm like, it's the worst word to use. And it's so funny. And now I just heard the word regenerative maybe yesterday in terms of like where the industry is going. And I was like, finally, a new word. But yes, because you're actively trying to change things and for the better. So sorry, thank you.
No, I love it. I love it that it's floating around out there. It's definitely something that we all need to start talking about, because we're in this moment of pause with the pandemic, and we've seen the way that the earth wants to heal, that the forces of the planet and the elemental forces of the planet are so much wiser than the human species is. But we've done so much damage as a species. And so the regenerative movement is really about actively trying to leave things not as we found them, but better. So sustainability is about being in the status quo, but regenerative is saying, okay, we've got to heal the damage.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy we're having this conversation. I hope everybody is listening to this, because this is where we need to go. Listen, this is how, the indie brand and indie brands need to start thinking. It can't be maintaining status quo or improving. We really need to embrace change and think outside the box and push boundaries.
And that's a very, people have different levels of comfort with that, right? I love risk.
Yep.
I've always, it's not even conscious, really. It's just something makes sense, and you don't know how to get to the next place, but that's the next place to get to.
And the hard part is
about regenerative is it's time to just start thinking about how we get to the next place.
Yep. And it's expensive. And that's the hard part for like indie brands like us. It's not cheap to do. And you're inventing, and that's not easy to do. But I think if we start to talk about it and put it out there, we're going to see options available.
And that I have seen, I will say that as a very much of an optimistic moment here, is that the changes that I've seen I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I've seen so many changes, and we're at the most hopeful place that I've ever been at. And that is that I was asking for PCR packaging 20 years ago, and I was literally laughed at a convention in New York. And I was told repeatedly, there will never be PCR in cosmetics packaging. And now we're at the moment where we're mandating that, where we're saying we have to use it.
And there's still a lot of work to do to get there. I mean, you and I both know that, yes, it's come so far, but we still have a lot to go. But that's where the excitement is.
It is where the excitement is, and it's where the unknown is, which is why I get so excited, because it means that we start to ask different questions. We start to find the people that we want to work with in this. And there's so many people that are coming along with this. Some of the biggest players in the cosmetics industry are being forced along with it. It really comes along with the genuine consumer drive of we want better things. We're voting with our dollars, and we want better things.
Absolutely.
And so there's that consumer awareness and desire for better products. And you're absolutely right that to do it right can be more expensive. That will eventually result in having pushed the bar to regenerative, organic, to all of that being more of the norm.
Yeah.
And that becomes more accessible the more it becomes the norm. And accessibility is truly important.
Well, that leads me. You literally set me up so perfectly for this one, Kristine. So talk about accessibility. Where can people find Taos Air? How can they get a piece of the action here?
Okay, so taosair.com, and that is spelled TAOSAER.com. You can also find us at Credo, at the Detox Market, at Faline, at Aaliyah, at Anthropology, and our mini deodorants just launched on Target.com.
Woohoo! So that's so exciting, because talk about making it available for everyone. This is the first step. That is so exciting. Okay, so what other, And by the way, for listeners, I will be putting all this stuff in the show notes so you'll know how to find and how to spell it. So don't worry. But anything that you want to share besides launching on Target, anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. Our full sizes are back in stock for longtime fans of Air. We thank you for being patient.
Already have mine.
Got stock in our full size. We've got something really exciting, 2 new scents coming out first quarter of 2021. And so kind of the consumer has spoken and asked, and we listened. And so we're going to be coming out with baking soda free and also an extra strength version of the deodorant for the, for high performance.
That's amazing.
And also, we want to offer your listeners free shipping on your first order on our website at taosair.com with the code COMINGCLEAN, all caps, and that is good until 12/31.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys. So go over to it. Go over to taosair.com. Order. By the way, guys, stock up on all different scents because they're all phenomenal. And now you'll have free shipping with Coming Clean in all caps. And again, that will be in the show notes. Now, I always end the podcast by asking 3, because obviously the podcast is all about the 3 Ps, being present, passionate, and on purpose and living purposefully. So I always ask everyone these questions. What are you currently passionate about?
I think mostly what I'm passionate about is I'm passionate about optimism right now. That's got to be kind of jarring for anybody to hear, but I've seen a lot in the last 20 years. And I would say that from my college days as a political activist during the divestment era, that we're making some progress. I think that it's a very rough but very beautiful time. People are being incredibly brave. And there's an understanding that we're all connected and that it's time to start taking meaningful actions to redress the past so that we all create a better future. And so I'm passionate about hope and truth and learning from the rise of so many new voices that have been with us all along.
Okay, that's probably the most beautiful answer that I've ever received on the podcast for that question. So what's giving you purpose right now? And I hope you're going to say air because
yeah, it is. Absolutely. I'm so excited about all of our new products. I'm excited about our new categories. I'm excited about how air has spun off into its own entity and it's really gathering momentum. And I have so many ideas for the future. And I feel incredible gratitude that this is what I'm doing with my life right now, that I'm working on things that matter to me, that I think have so much integrity in the sourcing and the creation of them. And it's a lot of work. I know that, the consumer gets to see the beautiful things that we create, and we want them to appear effortless and seamless. But from the inside, it's a long and detailed path of a lot of intentions. And it takes a team of incredible, hardworking, high-minded, conscious people to create something that's genuinely new and that can change this landscape. And so I just feel very fortunate for everyone that I work with that supports this vision every day. And they're kind of their wholehearted, really beautiful creativity and experience that goes into that.
I mean, for me, the team is my family, and I echo that. Like, that's what gives me purpose, is coming and doing what I do every day with the team that I get to do it with. I mean, in addition, as my kids may be listening, in addition to you kids, of course, but really, I'm so in the trenches and loving every moment. And even in the difficulty, there's so much joy. What are you doing to stay present? Or get present, because sometimes it's not easy to stay that way. How do you get present?
Because I've talked to you about this in the past. asking for some guidance from you. I've finally started a meditation practice. And it's transformative, and it is, it integrates into every moment of every day, and it is beautiful, and it is powerful, and it is humbling, and it is, it's absolutely astonishing, the difference that it's made for me over the last few months. And I look forward to it being part of my life every day forward.
I love that.
And the funny thing is that it's connected to my painting practice.
Painting is a form of meditation.
Completely. And so starting really in January of this year, I really dove back deeply into paint. I think because I needed that grounding in the meditation again, and the meditation of paint. And it's the most present moment experience that I can think of for myself. I fall into that color and the light, and I allow it to carry me. I'm the vehicle. It's rather, I'm the vehicle of the voice that wants to emerge. So I try to allow all of that information to come through me when I'm painting, but it comes from beyond me. It's not, it's that connection
it's
to the universe.
It's bigger than you.
Yeah, it's truly the connection to the universe.
Kristine, you are, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for being a part of my life. I really feel so lucky to have you on this journey with me too.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for our personal connection. Love supporting you. Love being supported by you, and I'm awed and inspired by your generosity. And thank you for this. Thank you for the podcast.
Absolutely, more to come. And like I said, I will put all of this in the show notes, everybody. But I know you have now fallen in love with Kristine Keheley. And I know everybody's gonna run to Taos Air, because seriously, guys, it is the best deodorant out there. Hands down. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Coming Clean with Indy Lee. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, and always love to get some feedback in ratings and reviews. If you have ideas for upcoming episodes, please be sure to email me at comingclean@indylee.com. That's comingclean@indylee.com.